1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. Tuesday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. It is the Royal Blue Podcast. It is Tuesday, August 19th. It is the first show following Everton's 1-0 defeat to Leeds United in the Premier League season opener. We are live on the Royal Blue YouTube channel, and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley, both in attendance at Elland Road last night. How are we? Both feeling okay?
Tired. Exhausted
well,
already. 90 minutes and I'm already exhausted.
We won't go into it, but we know you've had a terrible morning already. How are things, Chris? All good?
No, they're not hardy. We're happy, but no, it wasn't a good performance, but then they should have got away with it and got a share of the spoils, and they didn't, and I'm sure we'll go into both of those, the performance and the controversial penalty decision, because it was a controversial penalty decision.
Well, we will get into it. Yeah. Today's agenda, the show will be dedicated to last night's defeat. I don't want to be here. Chris and Joe don't want to be here. I'm sure the audience don't want to be here listening to it.
Wow.
But we will get through it. Hopefully cheer ourselves up. And you know what will cheer us up, Joe?
Go on, what?
Having access to the fastest VPN in the world, as well as the option to buy and purchase cheaper flights and hotels through our official sponsor, NordVPN.
Fantastic.
What a segue that was into our official sponsor. NordVPN is the Royal Blue Podcast official sponsor. So to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/EFC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. As always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. As mentioned, we are live, so get your comments in, get your questions in, drop your frustrations down. I'm sure there are a lot of them. Joe, I mean, where do we start? What do we criticise first? The lack of effort, the lack of desire, lack of quality, maybe even the wrong team selection. Are you in agreement with any of that? Where do we actually start on last night?
I think lack of effort and lack of desire is perhaps a little bit unfair. That's not where I'd be going with my post-match analysis. I think that it was a desperately miserable performance. And I think that there are some mitigating factors in that. Obviously, the size and shape of the squad and the injuries suffered on the eve of the campaign. Jarrad Branthwaite and Vitaly Mykolenko, and it seems that Adam Asnou, whether or not he would have been involved, but given obviously the significance of Mykolenko's injury, all conspired to make a tough task even tougher. But I think probably I would start with the fact that the most frustrating thing for me about the performance and the result yesterday was a lot of the problems. And Everton were always going to be challenged given the build up to the fixture, but a lot of the problems were actually just self-inflicted. They played into Leeds' hands. It was a nervy, lacklustre performance, an unimaginative performance. And it was, I think, more than anything, what we have seen from this Everton side and the various managers over the last few years is they can normally be quite stubborn and resilient and at least keep that side of the game. I know they only lost this game due to a late penalty, but they caused a lot of problems for themselves, a lot of misplaced passes. We always knew that a game at newly promoted Leeds under the lights of Elland Road on a Monday night was going to be a tough task. They were going to start on the front foot. They'd be aggressive. They'd be assertive. You hope that Everton would show a bit of experience, and even if there was a bit of a makeshift lineup out there, would just do what they could just to kind of quell the tide. Get through the first 15 minutes and just grow into that game. Instead, almost everything they did just served to give Leeds and their fans even more momentum.
Chris, I fully am in agreement with Joe. My prediction, I guess, for the first 20 to 30 minutes of the game was that we would need to weather the storm. And from a positive point of view, I felt that we did that to an extent. We didn't concede. You know, the Leeds fans and the atmosphere was certainly up there. And my biggest disappointment came following on from that 30 minutes, you know, into the first half, where we just didn't capitalise on anything from an attack and threat point of view. And it was just largely disappointing. I know Moyes said in the second half we improved slightly, which I guess we couldn't have got any worse. But at what point did we improve to, really?
Yeah. Like we all said, we knew what was coming. We knew what to expect. The dirty tricks from dirty Leeds was starting before the kickoff. One of the staff members went all around the press box giving out the team sheets, and they seemingly to everyone apart from us on the back row.
Oh, right, missed off.
I ended up chasing him across the rest of the stand.
How have you gone down this segue?
Yeah. Well, it was the biggest burst of pace from the visitors throughout the first hour of the night.
Forget the full
when I chased that fella down the steps.
The team selection distribution sheet.
Yeah, but you knew what you were going to get, don't you? You had the cauldron, the white hot atmosphere across the Pennines from Leeds United. We all knew that was coming. David Moyes knew that was coming. All his players knew that was coming. Yeah. And we, I applaud it. That's what you want. That's what you want Everton's new stadium to be like. Intimidate the visitors. And yeah, they threw the kitchen sink at Everton. You knew that was coming. They were going to have a go. A lot of huff and puff. On the front foot, they were cheering when Nonto would close somebody down, might go out for a goal kick or something, but they appreciated that. And yeah, they weathered the storm, which they did do. They were on the back foot. And, but yeah, there was nothing, was it? Not a shot not a shot at all for Everton for first half. And you just thought, at what point are Everton going to show their Premier League class, their experience? When's this going to come to the fore? And it didn't, but then that was the frustration, because they did all of that. They improved in the second half. It still wasn't great. It was far from great. But Leeds seemed to have sort of run out of steam by that point, but then got the reprieve with the penalty decision. Yeah.
I mean, Joe, obviously I said, can we criticise lack of effort, lack of desire, lack of fight, and you kind of hit back on that, and that's fine. But can we criticise or question, at the very least, David Moyes' team selection?
Yes.
Okay.
Look, like I say, I think, and he's got an absolute panning in the national media. Some of the stuff they've been writing about the selection today, I think they're slightly devoid of context, because I do think we have to start with the fact that Everton are in the midst of a very big squad rebuilding process. It was always going to require a degree of patience, and if you take, say, Mykolenko and Branthwaite out of that side, then automatically you end up in a very difficult position, because. And part of that difficult position is on the club. Like, Everton, we entered the summer knowing Everton really needed a first choice right back, and obviously at least one right wing option, probably two. Yeah. And they still need those. So when I'm there saying injuries have forced him to draw players out of position, that in itself is already on the club, I think, and probably perhaps on those above Moyes. For not having managed to get anybody over the line at all in there, which already means that you're playing Carlos Alcaraz out of position, already means that you're playing Jake O'Brien out of position. And then it just means that when Vitaly Mykolenko's unavailable, and to a certain extent Jared Branthwaite, because a very kind of solid, stolid, but maybe boring solution to his absence yesterday might have been to have just played Jared Branthwaite at left back, which we haven't seen much of, but I think they could have just played a flat back four and just dealt with everything that came at them. Obviously, that option was taken away from them, but I don't really understand how he alighted on the solution being James Garner at left back. That's the thing that confuses me. As I say, I think he went into the game, and we can go into the reasons why and whether he has a role in that from a recruitment perspective. I think he went into the game with one hand tied behind his back, but I'm not sure that he perhaps responded to the newer challenges of Mykolenko and Branthwaite being out, and then Asno not being available in perhaps the best way. Yeah, there weren't many options. When I asked him after how he alighted on Garner at left back, he basically said, well, I had to play someone there. And
I watched it, yeah.
I get that. He did. There was not a perfect solution. But the problem with James Garner at left back was that you basically create two problems rather than one, because Everton don't have a huge amount of options in central midfield. And, James Garner, whilst I think an ideal summer would see Everton in a position where James Garner is fighting, he might win that battle, but fighting for his place in the first team in that central midfield. I think there's a big difference between James Garner in centre midfield, someone who's obviously got Premier League experience, used to play in there, alongside Idrissa Gueye and having Timo Robenham there. And I also think there's a difference with perhaps, if you're going to play 4 at the back, then I would maybe have played Dwight McNeil at left back as opposed to James Garner. I would have gone with wing backs. That's what I would have done. But if you're going to play 4 at the back, the problem with playing James Garner is obviously he's not left-footed. So already he's out of position and then he's on a weaker foot. And I think if you put Dwight McNeil there, okay, he's out of position, but let's be perfectly honest, he's basically played as a wing back for 2 years under Sean Dyche, shouldn't he? That was essentially his role. And at least you have the distribution. He's got a great left foot on him, so he's natural on that side, and he can offer perhaps a little bit more of a range of passing from deep because he's on his favoured foot. And what that also does is it gives everybody else a little bit more protection because you've got the natural James Garner rather than Timo Robenham in front of that defence. And then maybe, obviously, it's uninspiring, it's unambitious, but sometimes I think you have to be pragmatic and look at what you've got. And I do think there were better options to put out, maybe, a back 4 and 2 centre midfielders, or wing backs and 2 centre midfielders. Basically, a back 5, 6 or 7 when you include the midfield, that just would have been solid, would have done a job against the Leeds side that caused problems, but also did run out of steam eventually without creating too many clear cuts. I think they deserved to win if you had to pick a side. And I think Everton were overwhelmed for much of that game, but I do think a lot of that was avoidable. So you're already starting that. When that side came out, I was looking at it and thinking, are they playing wing backs? And is Ndai left wing back? That was my thought process looking
People
at it.
People were saying Dewsbury Hall, weren't they? Nobody knew.
And some people did say 4 and Garner at left back, but I just don't see how. We don't really know. We asked about Asnu. We don't really know what happened with Asnu. And I think that even if he was available, I think that it's questionable as to whether or not he would have been the right choice yesterday. Yeah. But the way Everton lined up and the way they kind of went into that game, it did almost have the feel, and I don't know if this happened, it almost had the feel that something had hit their plans, like maybe Asnu getting injured very late before the game, and he just had to completely redraw the plan at the last minute, and that's why it looked so disjointed.
I think
that might be being kind, but
if that's the case, then say it then. Because I watched the post-match press conference, and I'm glad you brought up the question with regards to the left-hand side. And I'm not trying to say how you reacted or put words into your mouth, but when he responded to you, I felt you were a little bit shocked or taken aback by the response. Well, I just had to put someone there. That can't be the decision from the manager, just to say, well, I had to put someone there. Forget all this. Well, we need players, we need extra quality. We all know that team there that David Moyes had at his disposal, even with Branthwaite and Mykolenko out, should have been good enough to beat Leeds, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I think that perhaps underestimates Leeds, and it's the occasion. Everton were playing it's not just the opponents, yes, it's the occasion Everton were playing. And Elland Road, it was really hostile last night. And I've seen a lot of people, because I've been quite critical in my match report, and I will labour the point that I don't think Everton deserved anything from that game. I've seen a lot of people who perhaps weren't there say, actually, Leeds didn't create that much, and it was just a poor game between poor sides. And I think that, I don't want to labour this too much, but I think when you're in the stadium, you could see the rise and fall and tide of momentum. And albeit Leeds didn't create lots of clear-cut opportunities, they were very, very on top for a lot of that game. The momentum was well and truly against Everton. My frustration being, I think some of that, as I say, at the start of this off was predictable, avoidable, and self-inflicted. There were just too many kind of. One, with the lineup, as I say, you put James Garner at left, not just putting him at left back, then you take him out midfield. You create 2 problems where you only had 1. But then 2 was almost the mentality of the side. So many kind of short passages into midfield, into players that are back to goal, just allowed a Leeds side that was always going to be on the front foot to just put that pressure and put that foot in, get Everton going backwards all the time. And well, that's what the crowd was always going to feed off, and it give the players and it give the crowd momentum, and it just prevented Everton from ever really getting a foothold into the game.
Just go back to the atmosphere and weather and the storm, and Chris, I'll come on to you with the team selection and your thoughts on that. But I do think Everton managed that fairly well. I don't think Leeds had too many chances in the first 25, 30 minutes, and then Everton, I wouldn't say got a foothold in the game, but they started to open up slightly and gain a little bit more possession of the ball, but just didn't do anything with it. In terms of team selection, Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Because, you know, I completely agree with Joe. I completely would have gone with the back three with McNeil as the left wing back and James Garner as the right wing back. If you look at it like that from a logical point of view, I know Moyes hasn't been the manager when they've both played there, but surely he would have knowledge or some sort of experience knowing that Michalenko's played as a left wing back before. He might not be the ideal person there, but in terms of balance, we know he can play there. The exact same with James Garner. And then it leaves you with a couple of options what to do in midfield. Then you could play Drissagay as the holder. You've got Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, and then obviously Ndai, Beto, and then Alcaraz could potentially come on as the sub as well. So what are your thoughts on the team selection?
Yeah, to be fair, I think Joe and I both went with that. And to be fair, David Moyes has used that formation himself, albeit it was in the real... He was up against it that first game over in America when I was there at the MetLife Stadium. He had James Garner and McNeil as the wing backs that day. He had Nathan Patterson as a right-sided centre-back because basically he was up against it that day. He only had Jake O'Brien as his only recognised centre-back. So he's used that formation himself, maybe because it went so badly that day. That's more down to individual errors, really, than the system as such. So he knows that could be... And that's the way I would have gone. I would have gone 3-4-3, as it were, and had Tarkowski, O'Brien and Keane, and then Garner and McNeil as the wing backs, like we said. That's how I would have done it. I mean, I'm at pains that I'm not a fan of the three centre-back system myself, and discussed this with Michael Ball on his column this morning. He said maybe that would have even played into Leeds' hands more with having the speedy wide men and getting at you. But I think for this, like you said, for this particular scenario, at least it's got McNeil and that he's more recognised in that role rather than saying, well, I had to put somebody there. And just because James Garner can do a job for you and he's game. And I thought, as awkward as he looked, you know, he did hang in there. You know, he did
okay.
Yeah, considering he's in a really alien position. It's one thing him playing right back, but left back. I mean, it's you know, he certainly wasn't awful. You know, he got by, as it were. Everton didn't lose the game because of James Garner playing out of position in that role. But yeah, and as Joe has said, it also means that obviously he brought in Timo Robenham because everyone's like, oh, Timo Robenham in there. Where did that come from? I mean, it was a huge occasion for him. He started the first 4 games of last season when Everton lost, and then sort of couldn't get into the side. So it was a big night for him, and he ended up getting hooked. Obviously, he was booked before that, and I think there was one where he gave the ball away in front of just outside of his the area as well. So it was a tough night for him. Yeah, so there's got to be question marks. So when the team dropped, we were all like, who's going where? And is this going to surprise Leeds as much as anyone? So it was a bit of surprise, bit of shock factor. But yeah.
I can understand the arguments of not playing McNeil there because you would be worried about James's pace on the left-hand side. But that's the whole point of having the third centre-back there for cover, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, they didn't have a quick option there anyway. Garner's not known for his pace.
Well, it's not as if like he was there
exactly.
to
and I think that's it. Like there isn't I'd have played Coleman at right wing back. I would have done, and I'm not asking him to get forward. I just think that he's on the bench. He came on against Leeds. We've gone into we went into the summer expecting him to sign a new contract, but to be there, not necessarily to be relied upon heavily. But ultimately, if he's in the squad, you want to at least when you've got a game like that, and you know if you're going to get anything out of him, I'd rather him be there for the first half an hour to help Everton use his experience to navigate that first half an hour and grow into the game rather than come on or things like that. And I just think that I'd only be asking him to defend. And what you would then have is, all right, yeah, you got the pace of, say, trickery of Nonto on the left and Goodmunson, the left back, they both did really well. They caused a lot of problems down that right. And all right, you're right that Garner didn't lose a game or anything for Everton, but I actually thought that he struggled in the first 5 minutes. But what happened was, very quickly after that, Leeds just targeted Everton's right because they realised that's where they're going to have more success. Because I think there's a big difference there. If your trio, albeit it's not ideal, but if you've got Coleman with all his experience, a right wing back, Jake O'Brien as the right centre back, and then you've got Garner as the kind of covering midfielder, that as a trio is far more effective at dealing with the threat down the left than an out of position O'Brien, an out of position Alcaraz, and Timo Robenham. And then on the other side, if you've got McNeil, say Keane's your left centre back, and you've got Idrissa Gueye, then again, as a free to protect against the winger and the overlapping fullback, then again I think that's a lot more solid for Everton. And you've got the added bonus, and if they do get beaten and Cross gets into the box, you still got Tarkowski and the other centre back, whichever that is, whichever side they're coming from. Well, all three of Everton's centre backs are very good at defending the box. That is just something that Everton are very good at. They did it well last night, but they still conceded five corners in the first 15 minutes. They were under the cosh. O'Brien was needed at the back post a couple of times.
Yeah.
It was, it was a bit of a mess. It was a bit of a mess.
It was, and like I say, we'll move on from this point, but I was just disappointed with the manager's response to your question. I felt it was a bit of a brush off, and maybe even to go as far as to say as a little bit of an excuse when you add, forget the fact that we need to add quality to the team. You had players there that could have done a job, and you maybe looked at that option, but you didn't choose that option, and you just brushed it as a bit of an excuse to think, well, we need more players. Well, we do need more players, but that team was capable of beating Leeds last night if you'd set up properly.
I don't know if that team's capable of beating.
Well, I'll tell you,
it's definitely better at putting up a better show than it did.
Yeah.
And I do think that, this doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Like, what Leeds were the better side, but I didn't think Leeds were great. I think that you can't read too much into the opening weekend, but I do think one of the wider takeaways from my opening weekend is that I think there are actually quite a few. I think there are so many teams that look poor or average that the threshold to what Everton would need to put together this season to finish 13th and above isn't actually that high. But obviously they've got to actually do it, and that wasn't a very good start.
All right, well let me disagree with you a little bit. You said that you didn't think that team was capable of beating Leeds, or should have had at least a better showing. That team that played last night is largely the same team that beat Newcastle on the final day of the season, barring three players: Mykolenko, Ashley Young, and Jack Harrison. So Jack Harrison, no one that I know of wanted to keep Jack Harrison in the team.
No. A
lot of people were happy for Ashley Young to leave. Mykolenko, obviously that has been the key to this whole thing, this injury. Jared Branthwaite didn't play against Newcastle. It was Keane, Tarkowski and O'Brien. Is that right? Sorry, Tarkowski, and it was Keane and O'Brien. The point I guess I'm trying to make is that team is largely the same one that beat a very good Newcastle team, and then we've gone out there. What is it? 3 months later or so, and we've put up that poor performance. How has that gone from that Newcastle performance to that Leeds performance?
Well, I think it just shows what happens when you take Vitaly Mykolenko out the side. There's the paucity of options at left back, and obviously they tried to address that a little bit with Asnu, but he wasn't available there last night. One of the big differences between that side is you have a specialist left back playing in position. You have Young's not a specialist right back, but you have an experienced full back who can do a job at right back there. You have James Garner playing in his position, in centre midfield, and you have Carlos Alcaraz playing as a 10. Which you have someone like Harrison, and this is where I think this side is struggling so much at the start of this season is, and maybe this is on recruitment, but the difference between that side and this side is in, say, Jack Harrison and Ashley Young, you have players that obviously I think Everton want to move away from over the summer, and I think they needed to do so if they're going to make progress, but they're enablers. Like, they might be 6 out of 10, but they allow everybody else to play in position, and the team structure is more balanced as a result of that. And that's the problem that Everton have got. Like, they've already, because they haven't got any specialist options on even closer specialist options on the right midfield or the right wing, they're already at a disadvantage before you then throw injuries in. And I mean, that's one of the things that's so frustrating that that side. There may have been a group of players you could have put out there that should have beat that Leeds side, but that wasn't it last night.
No,
and it was always and as I say, because of the occasion, it was always going to be more than just playing that Leeds 11, which is why I think it's harder. I think if that had been a 3:00 kickoff on Saturday, it would have been a bit of a different game. I think if they were playing at Everton, I think it'd be a completely different game. But I also think that when you got more players playing in their right positions, that's kind of, I think, something that Everton are going to have to deal with in the next fortnight in the transfer window, in the sense that we've heard throughout the window, or throughout the last month anyway, that there's this kind of Moyes doesn't want to fill gaps for the sake of filling gaps. He doesn't want to just bring in players. There's a threshold of quality that they're trying to stick to and meet with the signings that they're bringing in. I think the idea is essentially that they try and bring in players that will help consolidate this season, but also help grow with the club going forward. But when you've got so much to do at some point, whether it be on price or quality, you're going to have to compromise. I think when you see how disjointed that Everton side was last night, there are lots of players that none of us would have perhaps, our eyes wouldn't light up when we see them, but would make a big difference to that side. If you just had a specialist right back and a specialist right winger, even if they're 6 out of 10 options, simply by just being able to almost just cancel out the negatives on that side because they at least know what they're doing, they can do a bang average job. But then by allowing everybody else to play in their positions, you take that side, you make that side a lot better. Moyes didn't start this summer, and I've got nothing to indicate that he's changed him, man. Saying that he'd want Vladimir Kufal. I'm not saying that Everton should get Vladimir Kufal, but that side last night is better with a 32-year-old free right back who at least knows what he's doing and then allows other people to play in position. I don't think any of us really... Jesper Lindstrom had a difficult season last season. I think he showed a bit more than Jack Harrison, but he struggled. I think that side would look a lot better with Jesper Lindstrom, even if he's just putting 6 out of 10 performances in on the right wing, and just allows everybody else to shift over and do what they're going to do. He's going to work hard and defend. Now, obviously, I probably, like everybody, want Everton to be more ambitious with their targets. But right now, when we're heading into the last fortnight of the window, Everton did need to build a squad as well as a first 11 that can compete this season. So when you start looking at some of them free transfers and some of the players that Everton have turned away from, you start to think, have they perhaps missed a little trick of being pragmatic? Maybe there had to be a little bit of taking the medicine this season, and there's still those types of players out there like your Josh Brownhills and players like that would just, instead of perhaps inquiring about a McGinn that you don't think Villa are ever going to sell, do you just set your standards a little bit lower just to fill out those squads? And then when you start the season with an 11 that's at least coherent, and then you can spend the last fortnight trying to add the gloss on, adding your Jack Grealishes to your mix and a couple of others. And that's, I talking in circles a little bit. But
No. Look, I understand everything that you're saying. I just think that is a standalone. It's a separate point in itself.
But it's not, because it started with your point about the team against Newcastle being better than, or being so similar to this. I'm saying it's not because what that squad had, it had those enablers. They might not have been of the quality that we want, but they at least allowed other people to showcase the quality that they had. And at the moment, the lack of a proper right back and the lack of a proper right winger is, it's undermining Jacob Bryan, who's not a right back. It's undermining Carlos Alcaraz or Ilan Mandai, who's playing out on the right. It's undermining James Garner, who's being pulled all over the place, not playing his best position, and the whole team structure kind of falls down as a result.
But I'll come on to you now, Chris. You are in agreement with me that we would have picked virtually the same defence at the very least, and you've almost said that. Well, okay, I'll ask you the question. Do you think if we'd picked the team that we said with McNeil on the left and Garner on the right, that performance wouldn't have been anywhere near as bad?
I still think it would have struggled, because I think that one of the central problems to last night was in central midfield, because you had Irobenham there instead of Garner. And look, Irobenham might have a lot of qualities, he might have a lot of promise, but I don't think he's ready for that importance of a role right there. That's why I wouldn't have taken Garner at right wing back. I'd have kept him in the middle, and I'd have played Coleman there. So you've at least got that stability, and you've at least got that solidity going throughout the kind of the back and the middle, and a little bit out wide. It's going to be unimaginative, but you've at least got a solid core there for the attacking players to then try and play in position going forward and have a little bit of freedom to at least try and show a bit more ambition than they did last night. It's a more solid base, is what I'm trying to say.
No, that's fine. I still think the team, there was a team that Moyes could have put out there that could have at least got a point and played a lot better.
I think we are in agreement on that, yeah.
One of the positive aspects of Everton under Moyes since he came in has been the away form, Chris. Without a doubt, it's actually been better than the home form. Yeah. I think, if my research serves me right, it's been 5 Premier League away wins under Moyes since his return. And we can look at the many reasons why that has been the case. For me, I think it's a lot down to the fact that we don't have to have a lot of possession of the ball. We can count, even though we've got lack of pace, we actually counter attack well, getting the ball further up the pitch. I feel like we just didn't do any of that last night. I thought energy levels looked a bit low, looked a bit sapped. This is where from the start I was coming in about the fight and desire to win the ball back from Leeds high up the pitch, force them into a mistake. That wasn't there for me. It was non-existent. And when we did win the ball back, it was balls probably into Beto's feet, where we know that's not his strength. It wasn't balls in behind. We just didn't capitalise on anything, any mistake that Leeds made. And it goes back to what I'm saying about the away form. This really, even though we knew we were going to have to weather the storm, this game really should have played into our hands.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I'm not making excuses, there was an air of inevitability about it, and Joe has talked about already the playing of the occasion. And I'll say now, what we on 19th of August, I mean, we're all disappointed now. Everton have lost the first game of the first post-Goodison Park season. I'll say now, I believe Everton will finish above Leeds United. I think Everton will finish a long way above Leeds United. But I always had reservations about last night's game, taken as an individual occasion, as an individual game. Everton has struggled through pre-season. Joe and I have been there since the start at Accrington Stanley, and Moyes has admitted himself it's not been great. People say, oh, it's all about fitness, it's not about the results. But they've never really got going in pre-season, and they've been mitigating circumstances. And you always thought, people say that going to newly promoted sides isn't the way it was in the past. I mean, in years gone by, you'd say, oh, going away to a newly promoted side, you don't want to be doing that first game of the season. But people say it's not quite like that these days. But I think out of newly promoted sides, Leeds would be like that in terms of that cauldron-like atmosphere. And it's not been a happy hunting ground for Everton for many years. I think it went like 50 years or something ridiculous, not winning a league game there, whatever it was, before Wayne Rooney scored the late winner in his first season. So, like I said, I'm not making excuses, and I was frustrated, obviously, in the manner that it happened, like we spoke about, the way they lost the game in the end, and we've not even, incredibly, we've not even touched on the penalty yet. But, yeah, it was the manner in which it happened. But I always went into that game last night thinking, the way things have gone pre-season, the Everton's record at Leeds, the way we know that Leeds is about, and I'm paying Leeds a huge compliment here in that, the way that their atmosphere, that's how football should be, in terms of atmosphere in English football. So, yeah, you did kind of fear that it was always going to be on the cards, as much as they'd done well away from home under David Moyes. I feared going into last game, before I even saw the team sheet last night, I did sort of fear about that. But having weathered that storm and come through all the badness, as it were, and the struggles, to lose it in the way they did, that was what sticks in the craw, I think.
I wasn't going to say this because I don't necessarily think it is the case, although it did cross my mind. But someone's brought it up in the comments.
Go on.
Just going back to the team selection a little bit, so I don't want to keep on this too much, but Tazul Islam has said maybe it was Moyes sending out a message to the Freegans, get more players in. We know how frustrated Moyes has been in pre-season. Can we shoot that down as a thing that, or do you think that it's got some plausibility to it?
I don't think Moyes would have put out a side there without the ambition of it winning.
Yeah, fair enough, isn't it?
And I understand what he's saying, and I know he's not necessarily saying that. But I think that Moyes has spent most of the past month, once he started speaking in pre-season, he spent most of it sending messages, hasn't he? I think, and I don't think his position could be in any doubt really, as to where Everton are and what they need to do. So no, I think whereas you might see, I wouldn't rule out as a possibility in pre-season. I think ultimately Moyes wants to win games. He wants to do the best for Everton, and I think he knows. Because it's not. I think he knows that the way in which football works as well. It's important for Everton to get off to a good start, and I think he knows how momentum can build. If you risk throwing away one game because you're trying to send a message, well, that can easily the negative momentum can easily snowball into more difficult results and performances. You can't treat a game in isolation. Once the season gets going, and I don't think he'd want to do anything to risk further games down the line.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Again, I don't want to harp on about it too much. It was just his response to you, just flippantly going, "Well, I had to just put someone there." I was just really frustrated with that response.
If the free, and if it is the free, because I mean, one thing we haven't quite been able to get to is the inner workings of maybe the Everton recruitment side and the Freakin' dynamic. We know that we keep being told that they had tried for a lot of players. and they're working really hard behind the scenes. What we probably don't know is what's been the your key factor in a lot of these deals not getting over the line. Has it been the Freakins don't want to pay that bit more money, or in wages, or has it been Everton don't want to do so because it's been burned by the past, or has it been Moyes or and those around them being that bit pickier with the players, or has it just been that actually they're both aligned? The problem has been that the players, that's something that we have heard a lot about this summer, is that the players aren't quite there, willing to just throw their lot in with Everton at the moment. That's where it is. But I mean, just in terms of sending a message to Freakins, I mean, if they've been paying any attention this summer, and you would hope that they've been paying a lot of attention, there can't really be any doubt about what needs to be done.
David Murphy says there are easier ways of sending messages to the board without hamstringing the entire team.
I think so.
I suppose, Chris, we haven't even come on to the worst part, or I guess the goal that obviously won the game and the decision that led to it, the penalty. I'll just come out and ask you, was it a penalty in your eyes?
No. No, I can see why it's been given, but no. And this has been the issue. Chris Kavanagh, the same referee. I mean, we get frustrated about inconsistency with referees and the way they implement the laws, but Chris Kavanagh's the same match official who was on VAR duties when Rodri had a bit of NBA action at Goodison Park and played a bit of basketball. His arm was outstretched, but for Chris Kavanagh,
hitting roughly the same area.
Yeah. So Chris Kavanagh said no. But when Chris Kavanagh said yes last night, put it all on the assistant referee. He said, "Oh, well, he saw it 45 yards away or whatever," and spoke to James Tarkowski after the game. Yet again, James Tarkowski is fronted up. Maybe says, he's maybe wanting to defend himself, for self-protection. But, good or bad result, James has come out again, the skipper, and spoken to us. We've got a piece on that with his views, his responses to what I asked him last night. I know he did the Sky as well, to be fair. So he didn't think it was a penalty. David Moyes didn't think it was a penalty. I know there was a lot of people in the Leeds camp thought, it wasn't even up for debate in terms of when Daniel Farke was doing his press conference. He wasn't even asked about that. But as Joe and I discussed in the car last night, probably wasn't part of the Leeds news agenda, really, what the story was like for them. I know Henry Winter, who's obviously not an Evertonian, he said this morning, the law is not being applied consistently when it comes to handball decisions. And just finally on it, before we get on Joe's opinion or whatever, it's this problem with Everton. Again, certain clubs it's being given, certain teams it's not being given. We've already had an apology handed out to Everton just a fortnight ago in a pre-season game when Tarkowski again, Ahmad goes down theatrically, and the referees actually apologised for that one. But, it's pre-season, they didn't lose the game. This is the real thing, this is the Premier League. It's been noted that Everton's 3 openers now, the last 3 seasons, obviously had Tarkowski last night. Year before that, it was Brighton, so Calvert-Lewin went down, penalty was given, Lewis Dunk, and then that one was overturned. And then the year before that in the opener was Fulham, again at Goodison, and Michael Keane scored, and again it was Tarkowski was deemed to have fouled Leno, and that one was disallowed, soft decision. So that's 3 seasons on the trot. Everton had a major talking point, a major decision in one of their games, and I don't think I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think
4 because the 4th game Chelsea started that season.
Yeah, before that. There we go. 4 seasons. I've missed one out. I've not even gone back far enough. Joe's dug another one out for the archives, but yeah. So I don't think
bastion of knowledge.
I'm not going out there saying, "Oh, they're after Everton. They just don't give it because it's Everton." But there's a huge bank of evidence here. I've done a piece on Chris Kavanagh today, and there's been a series of major decisions have gone against Everton, and just keeps on happening, doesn't it?
I'm not defending the ref here, but I do think that, I don't know from your vantage point what you thought, the linesman gave the penalty, and David Murphy is in agreement with me there. He said the linesman give the penalty, not Kavanagh.
That's what Moyes said. Yeah. He was told as well.
But that just from watching it in real time, he hesitates for a good couple of seconds, doesn't he? Does. And he's certainly looking over to the side, so he could just clear himself. Well, the linesman gave it, and then the VAR's confirmed it. Obviously, if you want to go and read Chris's piece, that is on the Liverpool Echo website. I'll ask your opinion on it, Joe, whether it was a penalty or not. For me, the handball rule is Chris has already said, it's so inconsistent. I don't know what it is. It's so divisive. No one knows what is handball or not. Are we getting to the stage now where, and I think I'm at the stage now, and it might be a little bit unfair, but it is what it is. Regardless of where you are, how it happens, whatever, if the ball just hits your hand, it's just a penalty. Now, I know that might seem a little bit unfair, but you've controlled the ball to an extent. At least then, it's concrete that it's a penalty. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that? Because if you don't, you're going back to the inconsistencies of what we're just dealing with right now.
I think it's clear to see that we're never going to get consistency on this because it's so subjective.
So just have it as, even if it's so unfair, if someone blasts the ball at your hand at 100 mile an hour from 5 yards out, it hits your hand, it's a penalty?
Well, no, I don't think it should be, but...
I don't think it should be, but I'm saying we're getting to that point.
Well, are we? It's a very easy path for me to take, and I'm sitting here thinking I've had a stinker of a morning already. Why do I want to do this to myself? But
because I'm forcing you to do it. That's why.
I have issues. I have issues with the refereeing last night. I thought the refereeing was poor last night. I thought the standard officiating. I thought Everton missed out on a lot of calls. And I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched this far back on TV, but where I think Everton were really unfortunate with the penalty is the Leeds attack starts when. The Leeds attack starts much further up the pitch when Everton are on the attack, and Ndiaye cuts in between two Leeds defenders to break into the box and goes down. And I haven't seen a replay of that, but in real life, I thought that was a free kick. I really think this whole passage of play should have been stopped 45 seconds up the road and ended with Everton having a free kick on the edge of the Leeds area. Obviously, a lot goes on after that. But I with the penalty, I can see why it's given. The process in which it seems to have been given, I have an issue with. But this ball hasn't just hit Tarkowski's arm.
Deflected as well, isn't it?
Tarkowski moves towards the ball, doesn't he? Tarkowski makes a proactive decision to move towards the ball, and the ball hits his arm. He's put himself in that situation. Whether it's harsh or not is a different thing, but there has been albeit split second, he has chosen to do that. And okay, it's not moving your arm into the path of the ball, but it's moving your body into the path of the ball. And in doing that and trying to block the ball, you put yourself in a situation where you could hit your arm to achieve your intended goal of blocking it. So I can see why it's given. I don't see how the linesman can give it from his position.
But he does. He definitely gives it.
Well, it seems to be relatively established that he did. I don't know how he can get it. And I don't think we end up in this kind of just ridiculous thing with. Well, that matters, and the reason that matters is because the linesman giving it, not Chris Kavanagh, is so important because the on-field decision holds so much sway when you go to VAR. Because when you then go to VAR, it's not, is this decision wrong? Is it? And this is it might be a 55-45 decision. Is it so wrong that I overturn it? And that's why it matters. So it's like umpire's call on cricket. I mean, a lot of people won't follow cricket and know what that means, but it's where the benefit of the doubt essentially goes to whatever the on-field decision was. So if you've got a referee who's made such an important decision when he's not actually sure about it, and we saw that because he didn't give it initially, and a linesman gives it from an angle in which he couldn't possibly do it, then that's problematic. Really what should have happened there is the linesman, surely Kavanagh should have gone to the linesman after he said, I think it's a penalty. And they discuss why the linesman thinks it's a penalty, why Kavanagh, from his view, which was a much better one, didn't think it was a penalty. And then they work on an informed decision, and then VAR checks that. Yeah. Because you would hope that in that process, there'd be enough sway on Kavanagh saying, really, and I've got a better angle than you. Surely you can't overrule me on this. But
he just didn't want to make a decision.
But anyway, I mean, look, like I say, it is a controversial penalty, and I've had a bit of bad luck. But I think that ultimately, when you look at the rules of the game and you look at Tarkowski in terms of the way after the deflection he throws himself at the ball, he does move his body towards the ball, and the ball then hits his arm, as opposed to him not having your example where it's at him from 5 yards and he hasn't got a clue about it, and it hits an arm that's in a perfectly natural position. I do think there is a difference.
Well, we've had this
And
so
I
many times
look
with Everton,
forward-
haven't we?
And I look forward to my mentions and the replies and this being absolute hell.
No, I don't.
But
I don't disagree with you.
that's-
My
yeah.
point is that everything is just so inconsistent. If it was consistent across the board, then like that's fine. If that penalty was given for when we got the Rodri one, I don't think you could argue to an extent.
Well,
do you know what
I
I
mean, the reference that Moyes used was the Bournemouth one on the halfway line against Liverpool the other day, wasn't it? When the lad effectively took a swipe at it with his hand and didn't get penalised. And you're looking at that, you're thinking, I mean, there's a big difference between that and what Tarkowski did, and that didn't get, and it's just a mess. But like I say, I'm coming away from this game frustrated as I am, thinking that the penalty is one of them. I can see why it's given, and I can see why it stood. And I think ultimately, the problem is that Everton put themselves in a position where, they could lose a game to a decision like that because they were so poor. And I think that, it's easy to kind of, and we haven't done this because obviously it took 20 odd minutes of, wrangling before we even got onto this decision. But I think it would be wrong for anybody to come away from that from that game, from an Everton perspective, focusing on the penalty, because I think there are much larger issues at play here that were evident in that performance.
If anything, that like distracted away from the poor performance to an extent which, it would have been, you would have been positive or content that you come away with a point from a very, very poor game.
Yeah. Quit that game very quickly for whatever reason, and we've been through some of them already. From the very early stage, it looked like that game became a game of survival for Everton, and they nearly did it.
I mean, one thing which frustrated me, and
Just the one.
yeah, obviously a lot of things, and people are going to come back to me and go, well, we didn't have the options, and then it goes back to bringing players in, which is all relevant, I get it. But, like, what was it, 2 subs that we made, Grealish, Barry? Was McNeil not worth giving a go?
Yeah, it was odd, wasn't it? Given that, he only brought Barry on because they're obviously chasing the game by that point. Yeah,
I thought at least not giving McNeil a go. I mean, at one point, Leeds lined up. Well, did they use all their subs once? Yeah, they did.
And they're back to having 2 keepers on the bench again, wasn't it?
I thought at the very least,
McNeil
was worth a punt for the last, at least when we conceded the goal.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's very frustrating. Again, is it going back to a manager not being proactive enough? Or, I mean, let's face it, you can criticise McNeil all you want. You can say he's not good enough. But for me, he's good enough to face a Leeds team and have an impact.
Yeah, well, for me, he was good enough to have been starting in those circumstances. So to not use him at all, maybe it's a bit strange.
Especially when you've got options on the bench.
Yeah,
you got Armstrong there, you even got a Schmitty. I know they haven't done anything much in pre-season, but it's not working on the pitch. So just do something, just try, and otherwise you just sat there with your hands in your lap doing nothing. Yeah,
and he, to be fair, David Moyes did cut a frustrated figure on the touchline, didn't he? He had his head in his hands on many occasions. But that's what Joe's saying, isn't it? It was when there's those unforced errors, as it were. You're playing into their hands. Yeah, Leeds were up for it, etc. And it wasn't necessarily high in quality, but they were feeding off the energy of the crowd. But when you just make no silly decisions and not just playing it the way that the passes, that that game management, that those sensible options. So there was a bit of that. But yeah, I don't know why. Maybe he didn't, because there were times in pre-season again when he wasn't U-turned to the bench, but that's because he genuinely didn't have the options. They were untried young players. But yeah, somebody like Dwight McNeil, I don't know why he wasn't given a. Certainly once why they were leading, but I'd have started with him. But yeah, Alcaraz struggled again because he could have even had McNeil. I mean, he's had done that experiment already, but McNeil as the inverted winger on the right. But there was a number of times, not just in obviously the crucial in the build up to the penalty where he slipped, where Alcaraz slipped. He fell on his feet quite a few times last night. I don't know if it was because he wasn't used to being in that area of the pitch, and he was being asked to sort of close down opponents and stuff like that and try and track his man. But there were a few times and he fell over. So I don't know. It was surprising that McNeil didn't get any minutes at all.
David, where's he gone? David Murphy has said, "Come on, Ian, McNeil is garbage." And I just think that's just an easy thing to say. Maybe he's not good enough to take us forward. in the next 18 months or so.
He's been one of Everton's main men for 3 years, and
didn't he get the most assists for Everton last season? I think for McNeil to come on, he was absolutely worth a punt. Sorry, you know, we know what his ability is to shoot from distance and his crossing and stuff like that. I think you know, it was a 6 assists McNeil got last season, more than any other player in the Premier League, and he missed
half the season, basically, at least 4 months. Yeah.
So you're not telling me that our highest assists contributor didn't deserve at least 15-20 minutes to come off on the bench, then I disagree, David, but that's what this podcast is about, as always. We'll finish off with some comments. Just jump in with you agree, disagree, or whatever. Michael James says our midfield would have been fine if Garner was in there. He'd been practicing with Garner. In practicing with Garner and Guy in the centre midfield all pre-season, so why change that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the point where it started to go wrong.
Blue 96, Tim, I assume he means Tim Idaboom, is not a Premier League player at all, Championship at best. Is that harsh?
I think he's not a mainstay for a starting Premier League player in that, you know, if you've got a side that's strong enough to be able to he's still young and he's still developing and he needs first team minutes. And I think you either need to send him to the Championship where he can start every game and continue with his development, or you need him in a squad that's big enough and strong enough to be able to give him, you know, half an hour off the bench here and there, and, you know, maybe playing a few cup matches, and the rest of the unit around him can offer him a degree of protection whilst he gets that development minute. I don't think Everton have that right now.
Tazul Islam, the most worrying thing was how unfit we looked, so slow and ponderous.
A lot of those players have been doing a lot of minutes, haven't they, pre-season because of that lack of squad options. But yeah, it's not great, is it? Let's hope they're not burnt out first game of the season. I'll be all right. I'll be okay.
Don't think he's over the team sheet situation.
No, it struck us. It was a sore point, that was. Back foot from the start.
Gavin Cunningham says, sell Beto, McNeil and Tim Idaboom and bring in a good defensive midfielder and Vardy.
Look, I mean, I think they need another centre midfielder. So
we can't. When you say stuff like sell McNeil and sell Idaboom, there's questions about whether those two players are good enough to take Everton on. But we can't even bring in players that we need positions for at this moment in time. Never mind replacing the ones we've got.
I think it's easy to be very frustrated with Beto last night. I think you've made this point already, Ian, to a certain extent. You have to look at what he was given, and he was isolated, outnumbered, and given balls to his feet with his back to goal as opposed to over the top or out wide, which is where he does a lot better. Now, look, I mean, his link-up play in those type of games when you ask him to kind of play neat 1-2s with Alcaraz and Ndiaye, it isn't the best. But bearing in mind, Everton have spent a summer and they've been unable to solve their problems at right back, right wing, to some extent centre midfield, and to some extent left back cover, depending on where we are with Asnu. You know, getting rid of a striker that's proven he can score goals, where he's given the right type of service and he's given the right run of games in the Premier League, to then add another massive thing to the to-do list is probably too much to do in the last fortnight of the transfer window, bearing in mind everything else that's got to be done. I do think that with McNeil, you only have to look at the signings. I mean, Everton's best player last season was Elland Road, who is, operates best off the left, coming into a central area. They've just signed Keenan Dewsbury Hall, who works best in that kind of space between an attacking centre and an attacking left position. And they've got Jack Grealish, who's exactly the same. I think that McNeil's has really dropped down the pecking order this summer for whatever reason, and it's difficult to see. I don't think he works as a 10. I don't think he works as a right midfielder. If you're not going to give him an opportunity at left back or left wing back, albeit we keep saying that it wasn't a perfect situation, but I do think it would have made more sense last night. But even when you look at how hamstrung Moyes was and what he could do last night, if you're not even going to turn to McNeil in that situation,
well, exactly,
then I'm not gonna. Then I do think it. If I was him, I'd be sitting there thinking, I'm not entirely sure, how many minutes I'm going to get this season, and I'm not really sure what his route into the team is right now.
But someone said you can't sell players who no one's bid for.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Just on Beto very quickly, listen, I'm always his biggest defender, as everyone knows. He was poor last night, but when you're trying to fizz 40, 50 yards balls into his feet, it's very difficult to just lay that ball off, one touch pass onto the attacker midfielder. There wasn't a game plan last night, let's face it. And it didn't work, whatever we were trying to do.
Yeah, the hope is that it was just for whatever reasons, and it's probably a combination of factors. Some of them are genuine bad luck. Some of them are perhaps more the recruitment side of things. But I think we kind of just have to. The best case scenario is last night was just a collective head loss. Just a collective head loss to injuries on the difficult injuries on the eve of the campaign, and a frustration in the transfer market, and the buckling a little bit under the pressure of the occasion. And hopefully they get back into Finch Farm today and tomorrow, and everyone just takes a deep breath and has a reset, and just Everton squads with less talent, or perhaps going back to where I was earlier, albeit perhaps with more players that could fit in, enable other players to play to the best of their ability. But you look at the likes of Dewsbury Hall and Jack Grealish, and they would have been two of Everton's better players over recent seasons. So Everton squads with less talent than the one that they have right now have pushed up towards the top end of the bottom half of the table through just doing the basic things. And if you think that it wouldn't take that much to turn that side into a side that's better than them, so I don't think there's a huge amount of need for panic right now. But I do think that we probably have to go. The question perhaps turns to, from an expectation that Everton would box off all the obvious things they needed to do in the summer. Well, now that we've got to the last 2 weeks, why haven't they got it done yet? And are they actually going to get it done yet? Because all of a sudden, I mentioned Kufal earlier. I'm not saying everyone should go for him. James Justin, I'm not saying he's a perfect choice, but for not much money, you have a specialist right back there doing massively, and because of the nature of that side and the paucity of options there, that would improve it. And he's also someone who could play left back. So I mean, you could just, even by having someone there you might have a quality threshold there that takes you above someone like James Justin. If so, I get that, fair enough. I applaud your ambition, but you have to also be pragmatic. And you say, well, look, Mikolenko picks up a lot of injuries, and Azmi might be a player who's a development player. Well, if you have a right back there that on a good day can be a first choice right back that that gives you more balance on the right hand side, and on a bad day can at least do a job at left back. Already for not a huge outlay, the squad is in a much stronger position, and I think that as well as trying to work out whether or not it's just worth paying the extra money, you can't just keep throwing money at things, but whether or not to just go a little bit close to Southampton's demand for someone like a Tyler Diblin. I think the other narrative of the final weeks of the window is going to be, are you going to just need to compromise a little bit on some of those players and just say, like I say, for not much money, James Justin makes that a different game last night. And that's how close they are to being a far better than average side. It doesn't take much to that inside to improve massively.
Well, we know he's looking, don't we? Because obviously Kenny Tete earlier in the summer,
they tried to address it. They tried to address it. So quite where some of these deals are falling down is probably something that we need to try and get to the bottom of. But Everton do need some players. So I mean, obviously we've got Brighton coming up, haven't we, on Sunday, and they had Buonanotte out on loan and Enciso out on loan last season. Both of them looked really good, didn't they? I mean, I wouldn't mind knocking on the door and just seeing if they both played right wing against Buonanotte. I can't remember where Buonanotte was, but they both looked decent. He was at Leicester, wasn't he? And I do think Everton need two options on that right. Yeah. Pay the money to get someone that you have faith in, and just get a loan. There are players out there, aren't there? So just to finish, I've just pulled those and see someone when I'm not in. Shouts out from when I was looking at the start, and when they might have gone somewhere else. I'm more speaking in general terms rather than specifics. But
finish off on a positive, Chris. Come on.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Bet times ahead. I've said already. You know, obviously we're hurting this morning, but I firmly believe Everton will finish much higher than Leeds United. Everton. We did our season predictions, didn't we? I said 10th. I think Joe went for 11th, and it still wouldn't be veering far away from that. Yeah, positive note to end on. Yeah, hopefully the best is yet to come from Jack Grealish, because I know there's a lot of people in that Man City camp are smarting for that. I mentioned him in piece this morning. I was at Bury Market at the weekend, and obviously a lady there on the cake stall saw me in me royal blue, and she said. You're stolen Grealish. And I said, oh, yeah, were you a fan, were you? And she goes, oh, bit of eye candy, but he's much more than that. I got trouble, actually, because I said, I've got me calves out for Jack. And, yeah, it's a huge coup for Everton, isn't it? And, yeah, finish on a positive. He got on for those last 20 minutes. You know, it was tough last night. But, you know, the football world, like, oh, Jack Grealish going to Everton. We were asked to pick our... Everton player of the season, weren't we, in the predictions as well? I went for Jack and that. Hopefully him and Dewsbury Hall can sort of revolutionise that part of the pitch for Everton going forward. And yeah, it was a tough night at the office. It wasn't good at all last night, but hopefully the bigger picture, better, brighter times ahead for the Blues.
Okay, well, just to let everyone know, there is no Wednesday show tomorrow. We are in the middle of basically transferring over to a new studio space, which we're kind of looking forward to getting into.
Absolutely.
There will be a Friday show. Not entirely sure what time that is going to be. It'll all depend on David Moyes' press conference, but we will preview the Brighton game. Whether that is in the new studio space or whether that is still in this space, we don't know. But like I say, no Wednesday show tomorrow, but we are back Friday. Just a reminder as well, NordVPN, to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to the podcast episode description box, nordvpn.com/EFC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, so get on board with Nord. That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week. I've been Ian Croll with Chris Beesley and Joe Thomas, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.